Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. I was going to say welcome to the garage and the court of public opinion, but this is a little more salubrious here. It's a grand piano sitting up there behind me. Now, Pete has got this wonderful knowledge of technology, and through his knowledge, I'm going to take you to the other side of the world. Slightly different format for the court of public opinion today. I want to introduce you to Chris McKinnell from the Warren Foundation. He is an expert, a consultant. He's written books, made movies, you name it, on the paranormal. And I believe in Paraguay, where we're about to speak to Chris, it truly is the night for it, dark and stormy. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jeremy. It's a true honor and pleasure.
No, great to have you. How do you get to be an expert in the paranormal?
You know, I don't consider myself an expert. I am actually a skeptic, but I know the phenomena is real. I've lived with it my entire life. Unlike most people, I had a leg up. You might have heard of my grandparents. If you've ever watched the movies The Conjuring or Annabelle or The Nun, those are based on the cases of my grandparents and myself, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I grew up with this. Now, when I was about 26, I started when I was 16 with them. But by the time I was 26, I'd already lived for 2 years in West Africa, and I had been exposed to other cultures. And I no longer could look at these things the same way that my grandparents did. They were looking at it, of course, through their faith, through their Catholic beliefs. But I was seeing in my travels that these things manifest according to our cultural and spiritual beliefs. That told me more about our power, both the power of fear and what we can accomplish when we let go of that.
Well, everyone is frightened, basically, of what he or she doesn't understand. So what is it about the paranormal and spirits that we should understand, maybe even embrace?
Well, the first thing is not to allow fear to control the narrative. It's completely natural to be afraid of something that you don't understand. It's natural to be of something that you don't understand. That's survival mechanism. But I think it's better to have an open mind. Yes, you should be careful, just like you should be careful around electricity. Electricity can kill you, but it can also light up the world.
Yeah. But all of that, most of that experiences with the paranormal are through things like, I don't know, our mothers saying, don't you fool with having a seance. Don't you do that. Those spirits, you don't want to do that. Or we go to the movies and we see The Exorcist or the Amityville Horror. These are not sort of pleasant introductions
Of course not. Of course not. They're terrifying. And I've had 2 cases of possession where men have died. This is serious. They can be deadly, but it is more about what we're attracting and what we ourselves are manifesting. What I have seen is, first off, I don't believe in demons. And I'm not saying that to disparage anyone's faith, but you're never going to see a Hindu demon in a Christian family. You're never going to see a jinn in a Hindu family unless they've been interacting with Muslims. These things are manifesting from us. We make them. We create them. I am not saying for a second they don't exist. They do. But it's almost like an alternate personality that takes on a life of its own. In the Western world, we see a lot of this over-the-top haunting, like a poltergeist. Matter of fact, I had 2 poltergeist cases in the past month and a half, and both of them did not involve spirits. Now, I believe in spirits. My grandmother has come back to visit me many times. Many people have visited me. And I don't think of ghosts as anything evil. I mean, think about it. Jeremy, how many times a day do you interact with people? And how many of them are you actually afraid of? It's the same thing with ghosts. They're just people.
You don't go through life being frightened of people, but if you believe in good, and most people do believe in good or a higher being or higher, greater force, it's only natural to believe that there is another side to that. There's a bright side and there's a dark side. You can't believe in good without accepting the fact that evil exists.
Evil does exist. Of course it does. But to put a face to evil, instead of taking personal responsibility for our choices, for our free will. I have seen horrendous things in the paranormal, but I've never seen anything.
Give me some examples.
My very first case, when I was 16 years old, I was afraid of the dark. And my grandfather called me and said, Chris, we've got a poltergeist case tonight. I want you to come with me. Now, I had never even considered going on a case. He had never talked to me about this. But I reluctantly agreed. And when we got there, the husband and wife were afraid to go into the house. And I understood why as soon as we walked in. It was this tiny little cracked house. Just a living room and a kitchen downstairs, and upstairs there were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. And as soon as we walked in, the house was shaking from the pounding going on in the walls. And most of the furniture had been removed. There was just a recliner and a couch in the living room. As we're going up the stairs, we can hear growling and clawing in the walls. And just as we got to the top, I looked to my left into the bathroom, and straight out of Hollywood, there was a giant funeral cross on the wall, and it was turned upside down. My grandfather had me sit in the master bedroom in the dark while they went downstairs to try to use religious provocation to make this thing reveal itself. And I thought, what more do you need to know? Look at what's going on around us. But my grandfather had been in World War II at 17 years old, and he wasn't going to let his grandson grow up afraid. So I sat there in the dark for an hour where the woman had been attacked while they were downstairs trying to make this thing reveal itself even more. By the end of the night, we were on WTIC AM radio 1060 with Brian Dow overnight. It was a talk radio show. We were on the phones, and at 3 a.m., it was pitch black. I was in the recliner in the living room. My grandfather and the lady were on the sofa, and the husband and another one of our people, a man named Paul Bartz, were upstairs in one of the girls' rooms on the phone there. The woman screamed that her face is on fire. 2 hulking black shapes had just come down the stairs, and we could see them even in the dark. The woman, my grandfather, put the flashlight on her face, and we could see 3 claw marks appear and blood drip on her chest. And then a pot that we'd been trying to burn Holy Church incense in flew out of the kitchen around the corner and straight at my head. Just missed me, hit the window right behind me. The shade flew up, the pot crumpled, and the window didn't break. The woman started screaming she wanted out of the house. I thought, great idea, I'm going to help. I mean, I was scared out of my mind. And I ran to the front door we had been in and out of, and it wouldn't open. The lights are now going on and off. And the recliner I had just been sitting in 10 seconds earlier rolls across the room toward me. And then the door opened by itself and we got out. And I looked behind me. My grandfather was calmly on the phone, talking to the people on the radio, telling them what was going on around us. I've never seen anything so brave in my entire life. And I'll be grateful to him till the day I die, because that night I went home, and for the first time, I went to bed without the light on. I just felt if I could live through that, I can live through anything.
Why that house? Why those people? Why would spirits just do that?
You know, I was 16. my grandfather, his explanation didn't make sense to me, to be quite honest. We were called back there after a successful house cleansing, but a year later, things were picking up again. The woman had been in the basement and she felt something sharp go into her scalp. And she pulled what looked like two claws out of her head. But when I brought it to the zoology department at the University of Connecticut, it turned out that it was the first premolar of a 1 to 2 year old domesticated pig that had been broken in half, and the roots of the tooth that looked like claws had been shoved into her head. Now, this woman had converted from Judaism to Catholicism to marry her husband. And my grandfather's explanation was the devil hates it when people choose Christ, and that's why. But honestly, I've seen that however you want to visualize God, however you want to, I am a pastor. I believe in God. I just don't think we understand God. I think we're like three blind men touching an elephant and all having a different little piece of the puzzle. I don't know what happened in that particular house. I wish to God I could go back and look at it again. But unfortunately, that's possible.
Do you have a theory as to why some people have the ability to see spirits and spirits communicate with them? Why
Yes.
your family? Why your family? Because your family is famous for the paranormal.
Yes, they are. But there have been studies done all over the world. Matter of fact, there was a wonderful one by a woman named Dr. Maria Strom at the University of Uppsala. And she just put out a paper in November about universal consciousness. She came to the same conclusions using quantum physics that I've come to through 45 years of field experience and study. It's amazing what I put in my book, The Warren Legacy. She came to the same conclusions completely separate from me. We're in conversation now. Your mind is just the receiver for consciousness. And when you die, you will continue on. Think of it this way. Your body is just the vehicle for the soul. And when it breaks down, you get out. The reason most of us don't interact with spirits is because they're moving at a different pace and they're not on the road anymore. They come to us when we call to them. So for family gatherings or births and funerals, they're going to be naturally drawn to us because they still love us and they still care about us. That's what I've seen. In this particular case, though, I don't think it was any of that. What I've also seen is we are capable of influencing our local reality. I was in a house in Tewksbury, Massachusetts. Now, this had been a poltergeist case. The kids were not getting along. They had been fighting constantly and things were acting up in the home. This is not terribly common, but then again, it's not uncommon. But we had done a spiritual cleansing. Everything stopped for a year. I was invited back to see the family. And that night we were staying in one of the kids' beds. My cousin and I, we were in our sleeping bags. The 10-year-old was not happy we were there. And the next thing you know, the bed picked up, flew across the room, smashed down with us in it. And I laughed. I was so surprised and so amazed at what I had just experienced. My cousin, on the other hand, he made smoke rings. He was out there like you couldn't believe. The thing is, nothing ever happened again after that. And what that made me start to consider is, could it have been the 10-year-old who was very upset we were in his bed? Did he hook into energy that she didn't know how to control and subconsciously threw us across the room? What I have found is, yeah, that's exactly what it was. As I was saying earlier, I had 2 poltergeist cases recently, and one of them was a father who had some abilities. He'd grown up in a haunted house. His mother, grandmother all had abilities. And he was having marital problems. Now he had an 8-month-old and a 2-year-old, and he was obsessed with the idea that they would be affected, that they also could be hurt by what he had grown up with. and he started manifesting the phenomena. Every time his wife and he had a problem, maybe a clock flew across the room, or another time it was a stack of plates right next to his wife. As soon as I explained to him what he was really dealing with, that he was manifesting the phenomena and that he needed to work on his relationships and stop giving into the fear, we didn't need to do ritual cleansing or anything of the sort. I still check in on him. Everything is going great. His child, he sent me a picture of her 2 years old in the bathtub, big smile on her face, because for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. And that's all it took. It just took him understanding he was doing it. And I've got hundreds of cases like this that I could point to. This is what I'm trying to get across. We have the ability. Yes, spirits come back. I had my great grandfather, my Lorraine Warren's father. I was driving home from a party when I was 16 years old, and there was an old man in the back seat. I had no idea who he was. Scared the crap out of me. Next day, out of the corner of my eye, I'm at a place called the Canton Bake Shop where I work, and I keep seeing this old man, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know who he was. But when I told my mother about it, she pulled out the family photo album, showed me a picture, and said, "Is this him?" And of course, it was. And she said she had prayed to my great grandfather to watch over me that night because it was my first grown-up party. It was an early experience in the fact that love continues even after we die.
The power of prayer. Tell me about that, because if you can, I take it, summon up. Well, that's my problem, I guess. Seances and things like that. You don't know what you're summoning up. You could be summoning up goodness. You could be summoning up true evil.
Mm-hmm. The reality is what you put out is what you're going to attract. So you're right. Fear communication is incredibly dangerous because if you're, for instance, an adolescent whose emotions are all crazy and wild, everything is brand new, it's all raw, you could be attracting something very, very negative or manifesting something negative. But if you're going into it properly prepared, you know what to do, you know how to set spiritual guidelines, and if your mind is in the right mindset, it can be a beautiful experience. Usually, those footsteps you hear in the hallway are not the devil. The devil doesn't politely knock at your door. It's usually your grandmother or the old man that used to live there. Even if you, for instance, see a coffee pot explode across the room and smash against a wall, I always tell people, look at the consequences. Did anybody get hurt? Has anything happened since then? It's probably a spirit who is so desperate and frustrated to get through that it was an explosion of energy. And that's when you call us in. We try to communicate, see what we're actually dealing with, and maybe help that spirit as well as the living soul. We treat everyone the same.
I want to ask you about the book, but one more question about the spirits. Now, you say when we die, it doesn't end there.
Right.
Now, is it if you've lived a good life, you go on to be a good spirit? Is it that if you have been a bad person, you will become a bad spirit? Or is there a moment of choice? You decide that you're going to be on the dark side or the devil's side. You know, is there a moment of judgment where decisions are made for your future spirit life?
If you were a jackass in life, you're going to be a jackass today. That's the reality.
Not a jackass is around.
But the thing that I do want to point out, you're saying the word Satan. And when you study the history, there was Ha-Satan before there was Satan. This was a spiritual prosecutor from the Old Testament, from the Talmud. This was a prince of heaven. And that eventually developed into our understanding of Satan. But even if you look at the New Testament and Jesus walking in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights before he goes to Jerusalem, Satan shows up as a tempter, as a spiritual. He was testing Jesus's faith to see if Jesus was really ready for what was coming. That would be the way the Old Testament would have interpreted that. Same thing in Job, when he walks into, during the beginning of the book of Job, Satan walks into the throne of heaven and asks permission to test Job's faith. So our beliefs in spirits and demons has evolved over time. Even the word demon comes from daemon, which was the Greek idea of the messengers of the gods to humanity. They weren't evil at all. They were there to communicate wisdom back and forth. Having said that, there are souls so black that they will hide from the light of God and they will create their own hell. That's the tragedy that I've seen. Even people who are not necessarily bad at all, but they're just afraid to pass over, or they have unfinished business, or they want to protect somebody, or they've got an attachment to something. They're going to hold on. We had a case in Newtown, Connecticut, with an old man who didn't want to leave his house. And he caused hell for the family that lived there. He was slamming cabinets and drawers and throwing dishes around. And there's even a clip online of a table going across the room on YouTube. The family, my grandmother and grandfather, tried everything to get this guy to stop, and he wouldn't. Eventually, the family fled. They turned it into a sporting goods store, but they still had to close it at night because all hell would break loose again. It wasn't until they tore it down that the spirit no longer felt an attachment and moved on.
So they don't want to coexist with you. They don't want to live peacefully. I mean, he could have stayed there forever and just kept his mouth shut.
Well, most do. Most don't want to have anything to do with us, or if they do, they're there for the right reasons. I've got so many beautiful stories. The truth is that it isn't normally negative. It's normally beautiful. But there are those occasional old cranks who want to cause trouble.
I want to talk to you about the book, but I've always believed that I've had a guardian angel because I have come so close to so many critical moments in my life and yet somehow survived, and indeed survived and prospered. Somebody's looking after me, I sense. Maybe that's just a romantic interpretation. I've got no idea.
I agree with you. I believe that there are spirit guides that watch over us and that we can open ourselves up to them. People have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. As a matter of fact, let me give you an example of you were talking about prayer earlier. Ritual and prayer are focused intention of your faith, and they work. We know this for a fact. There are scientific studies, double-blind studies on heart patients, and those that were given directed prayer, truly from people who were caring and wanted those people to heal. Those people improve. And right in Australia, there's a place called Clegg's Cave, where for 12,000 years, up until the mid-1800s, they were performing a ritual using a stick suspended on twine, smeared with tallow or animal fat, sometimes human fat. And this was used for either healing or cursing a person. Why would any culture hold on to a ritual for 12,000 years if it didn't work? That's the power of prayer. That's the power of intention.
What happens to, I don't know, a good man who goes bad? What happens, when we've had a few instances of this in our country, and I'm sure in your country, where a priest in a very trusted position will abuse children. What happens to him? What does God do to him?
There have been so many studies done that prove that we keep coming back, that reincarnation is real. There's a famous study of a young man, it's in my book, a young man who 3 years old, was remembering fighting in a battle in the South Pacific as a fighter pilot. And he remembers dying. He remembered his name. He recreated an entire cockpit, and they were able to track down some of the survivors. He recognized them. He knew their names. He was able to call them out by name. This isn't unusual with children. And there are famous psychologists who've been carrying on these studies for decades and gathering this information. It's all in my my academic paper. I'm actually going to be presenting this paper for the Society for Psychical Research in London, October 19th. What I found, and this is actually what the basis of my book is about, modern science and ancient mysticism, whether it's ancient Christian mysticism or Sufism, Hinduism, Buddhism, what have you, all have been pointing to the same truths. It's amazing to watch quantum physics catching up with thousands of years of wisdom. And that is, there is something greater than us. There's the block theory, block universe theory, or the holographic universe theory is another one, that everything is connected, that everything is part of a greater whole. And that's what my book ultimately is about. It's a journey from fear, using the paranormal as a lens to examine what's really going on behind it. So it goes from fear to enlightenment to ultimately to empowerment. It's a comforting idea to think in about hell, that there will be ultimate punishment for Hitler and things like that. Those individuals are going to keep coming back again and again until they get it right. Whatever they're holding on to, whatever that hatred is or love, whatever those connections are in their lives, they will have to keep coming back and working it out. They will never get to let go of that. Our world can be a heaven. We have that power, but we don't believe in ourselves enough to do it. We have put self-imposed limitations on us. You live a life where you wouldn't accept certain limitations, and therefore they were not there for you. That's what I have found in my life. I was in a wheelchair and on oxygen for 10 years. My family wanted to lock me up in a rest home and just let me die. And today I'm out in the world. I'm traveling. I'm about to do a television series with the History Channel where, similar to Anthony Bourdain, I go into a country, I immerse myself in the culture, and I learn about the people and how they deal with the paranormal. I want to get away from the fear conversation. I want to empower people. I want them to understand that there's so much more than what your fear is blinding you to.
I'm fascinated by you. I'm looking forward to finding that book. Pete told me that you'd written a book, but I don't know what it's called. What's the name?
It's called The Warren Legacy: What the Paranormal Reveals About Consciousness and Reality, and it's available right now. You can get it either on Amazon or, more simply, chrismckinnell.com. I would recommend going there because we have a special edition on there that really is something extra. My grandfather collapsed from a heart arrhythmia in 2001, and just before he died, he recorded this cassette. It was lost for 25 years. Here you go. Allow me. It was lost for 25 years, and a woman named Sandy had it. My grandmother had given it to her because she was going through a haunting, and this is a set of prayers, angelic music, and my grandfather gave me instructions on how to use it properly. Sandy finally decided it was time to come back to the family, and she got a hold of me. And the night she agreed to send it back to me, her 45-year-old son woke up in the middle of the night. He was spending the weekend, and he was going to the bathroom in his underwear, and he looks down the stairs to his mother and father's room, and there's an older woman with a bun in her hair and a chicken in her arms looking at his mother. She turned to look at him and smiled at him, and he was so embarrassed. He was like, what is this woman doing here? And I'm in my underwear. And then she disappeared. He had no idea who she was. The next morning, when he told his mother, Andy, of course, knew who she was. My grandmother loved her chicken. They lived in the house with her. My grandmother wanted this book done. She had been after me forever to get this out. The special edition will include a digitized copy of my grandfather's final work. It includes an audio tutorial on how to identify a haunting, what to do if you're in a haunting, how to protect yourself, how to ground yourself, and how to do a spiritual cleansing of a home. It also includes an entirely separate booklet on how to put the lessons in the book into practice. That's the one I think most people could use.
Fascinating.
And that's at .com.
Chris, I think I've talked to many people over the years, but this is truly one for the books, and then one that I will certainly always remember. Great honor to talk to you, Chris. Good luck with all you do. Seems like you're doing plenty. The Warren legacy. Do you ever scratch your head and think, well, maybe it's a Warren curse?
No.
Is it a blessing? Is it a blessing or a curse that you have this paranormal ability?
I don't even like the word paranormal. To me, it's all normal. It's just not yet understood. And what I have found, online, I have a psychic support group for 950 members right now around the world, people who have felt that they were not understood. And this is a community for them. It nurtures them. That's what my grandmother taught me, to listen to people and to give them a place that's safe. Everything I do for free. Obviously the book costs money. But if I'm helping you, that's always going to be free, and it's always going to be confidential.
Sounds like a bestseller to me. Pete is on the other side of this camera, and this technology that we are using to speak to you on the other side of the world still has me gobsmacked. Just totally amazing. But Pete, I've known Pete for 40-something years, and he's always said to me that we knew each other in a previous life, and he thinks it was the Old West. We were, I don't know, gunfighters together or cowboys or...
Oh, I had a badge. I know that much.
Oh, he had a badge. What I had.
Well, you've been afraid of it for years, and I think it's probably because you died falling off of one.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I do have a fear, a love of horses, but I do have a fear of them. And it could well be. It could well be.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful to talk to you, Chris. Bless you. Bye.
Bye-bye.